Hey guys, it's me, EODGamer here, and with so many upcoming characters in 3.1 as well as the upcoming patches, most of you might be wondering, should you pull for Nilou right now, or perhaps could you wait on a later date, and what value does she offer to most accounts? Now we will be covering all of this in this video, and of course this is a leak-free video, but we will be making some very good assumptions that was covered in the live stream. Now first and foremost, for those of you who don't know her kit, basically the TLDR and you don't want a long-winded story is, her elemental skill has a different infusion mechanic where she either does more hydro infusion and damage or has this aura-like appearance that applies wet status to enemies around her. Now what her highlight of her entire kit is basically is that she specializes being in a bloom team with passives and buffs supporting her being played with only Dendro as well as Hydro units, making her flourish very well and more so than other Hydro characters in a bloom team. And now, let's get on to the very essence of this video, the real comparison. And Hydro 5 stars are very different from other 5-star characters because a large proportion of the Hydro characters are actually all 5 stars. Till today, we only have 2 4-star Hydro characters with only one new one coming up. So in that sense, it makes it a lot more relevant to start comparing all of these 5-star characters into a very nice grid that we see here. And I use this resource allocation grid in a lot of buying decisions I make in real life as well as in resource scarce games and gacha games. So on the horizontal axis, we see competition, the black colored axis, where on the right you have few alternatives for a particular character. Shenhe and Bennett are examples of damage buffers that have very few alternatives other than perhaps each other buffing certain characters. And on the vertical axis, the red color axis, which is how niche a character is, ranks the character based on versatility. If you are higher up on this axis, you basically are more versatile, and the lower you are on this axis, the more niche you are. And ultimately, we are looking for the golden axis, which for every single Primo Gem, you're getting a greater bang for your buck because you're getting a character that very few alternatives exist, but yet the character is super versatile. Now let's jump in with Nilou and where she stands right now before comparing her with other characters in the 5-star Hydro characters category. And in my opinion, where Nilou really stands out is her low competition because of her passives that boost and makes her possibly the best in slot reactions enabler for a bloom focused team. And she gets bonuses for just being a team focused on Dendro and Hydro. Now where it starts to get a little bit grey is in terms of the niche axis, where outside of a bloom focused team, she does seem or feel to be rather lackluster in performance compared to other main DPSs like for example Childe, who is a much better enabler, Hydro enabler on field, and as well as Ayato, who has a much bigger Hydro application and good damage as well. Of course, more testing needs to be done on Nilou to exactly see where she stands, but these are my initial reactions on what I feel Nilou is. So to put it all into perspective, I do feel that she lies somewhere in the purple quadrant right next to Shenhe in this diversity category. But of course, we need to look at the other 5-star characters now in order to get a better sense instead of just looking at this chart in isolation. And the very first comparison we're going to be doing is with Kokomi, who is of course the on-banner character right now in 3.0 as the time of recording. And Kokomi is a really flexible unit that can be played in most Hydro reaction team comps. She can scale with investment or perhaps even used with very little investment and just used as a trailing tail buffer. Very free to play friendly and is very highly efficient in terms of Primo Gems used and the amount that she gives back to the player in terms of return on investment. Compared to Nilou, of course, I do think Nilou is much more niche in terms of her kit and is definitely very different from a character like Kokomi. You're going to need a more defensive other units, for example a Dendro unit or other Hydro units that are relatively more defensive to make full use of Nilou's kit properly. And until we see a Dendro healer or a really strong Dendro unit, I really do think that for now, Kokomi does seem like a bigger bang for your buck, other than of course the fact that Nilou might offer a bit more diversity to your team comps, as well as a bit more novelty as well. Now Yelan was an attempt for MiHoYo to monetize Xingqiu's excellent performance. It was known that Xingqiu was one of the best characters in the game, and Yelan was a very good solid improvement from Xingqiu, yet also keeping both of them very relevant in a double Hydro team, for example with Hu Tao and Zhongli in the last slot. Now Yelan is a very solid character that fit very well into the meta, and no one really disagreed with her in terms of her performance. In terms of alternatives, she really only has Xingqiu as a solid alternative, and both of them yet synergize with each other very well, battering both of them for good damage. In terms of versatility, Xingqiu was already one of the very good characters in the game, with being very versatile, fitting into many meta teams, and Yelan is no different. I think in terms of comparison between Nilou and Yelan, Yelan is much more different because she offers a much more stable off-field DPS role when you already have a specific damage dealer. For example, if your main is maybe Ayaka or Hu Tao, or the person that can use an off-field damage dealer and you don't want a new on-field character, Yelan likely will be a much more preferred choice compared to the two of them. Nilou, on the other hand, is really for a player who is maybe a little bit more ambitious or brave to try out different team comps and say no to meta and just want to figure out perhaps the evolving changes that Sumeru might bring. In Genshin Impact, you don't really need meta in the late game to clear content, and I do think that even though Nilou is slightly different from the old meta characters of the whole entire Inazuma patch, doesn't mean that she is weaker or better than Yelan in that sense. It's just that they fulfill different team comps, but Yelan ultimately is much more flexible and versatile, and likely will be a greater bang for your buck. And of course, in the terms of the last two comparisons of Childe as well as Ayato, these two are more similar to Nilou in the sense that they are both on-field damage dealers which take out substantial amounts of field time, but also offer very good hydro application on the side. And I think that in terms of hydro application, Childe likely will outperform and is a much better hydro enabler for most other hydro related team comps, thus good damage on field as well. Ayato, on the other hand, has an excellent Q and his burst is probably unrivaled in an AoE hydro application. Nilou, on the other hand, really stands out between these two other hydro DPS damage dealers as really being a bloom enabler, and I think more needs to be done in terms of testing in order to actually see where she stands, which is why I'm going to keep this section on comparing between Ayato and Childe relatively short, because it's all determined based on the numbers that she actually shows and the relevant ICDs, which currently I don't know as of pre-release analysis, as we don't look at leaked content on this channel. But more testing will be done. And all in all, I do think that Nilou is a very good character, and personally, I do like Nilou's kit a lot. I think that she is a character that has a very low floor or barrier to entry in terms of picking it up, but in terms of the skill cap for this character, it can go really high because she has a very different way of being played. For example, she's being played into a team comp that is very new meta and requires a person to be able to grasp different team comps and team building very quickly, as well as also being able to switch between her elemental forms, whether you want that additional hydro infusion and damage stance, or whether you want a bit more AoE application to let your off-field supports do the trick. I think this character is definitely a joy to play for people who like a bit more complexity, and I really like the diversity that she brings to Genshin currently. I'm excited for this character, but overall, in my opinion, in terms of all else being equal, I think that as a player who has very little resource and has to choose between certain characters, and my honest recommendation, as I always want the best for my viewers, my honest recommendation is let the theory crafters and content creators try her out first and figure out where she fits in the meta, because she's obviously pretty different. And if you are a person that wants to pull for her, you can always pull her on the rerun. She will likely come back, and as well as Sinnoh in general. Because ultimately, I do think that the Dendro Archon might be a better or more value for money based on the trend that we have been seeing from Venti, from Zhongli, as well as Raiden Shogun. If you could only choose one, I, as a free-to-play, would want to choose the Dendro Archon instead of Nilou. And Sinnoh also looks pretty attractive as well. And if you guys want to know some thoughts about Sinnoh as well, since he's going to be the other character in 3.1 that you might want to also pull for and you're thinking between both of them, I'll be doing a comparison between all 4 of the banner 5 stars after this video, but I've done a should you pull video right here on Sinnoh, which I do think you might enjoy watching as well if you enjoyed this one. And thank you for watching, and do consider liking and subscribing if you enjoyed the content so far. It will really help this channel grow, and your support really means a lot to me. And see you in the next video.